Welcome to Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Thursday, April 18th. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The Akron game in 135 days. The game against Michigan in 226 days. We're continuing our wrap-up of the Ohio State spring football season today. We're going to do that by letting you hear directly from new Ohio State offensive coordinator Chip Kelly. Kelly got a little bit of a late start this spring. He was not the first new Ohio State offensive coordinator of 2024. That would be Bill O'Brien, who had a brief, about 2-week stint before leaving to take the head coaching job at Boston College. So exit Bill O'Brien, enter Chip Kelly. He got to go through the full 15 practices at Ohio State this spring. So what were his impressions of the offense coming out of the spring practice season?
We'll look at all 15. So I think, this day is a big part of it, because it was the first time they ever got to play. Some of those guys ever got to play in front of a crowd. And it was an amazing crowd. You get 80,000 for a spring game. You could see some of the young guys kind of looking around like, wow, this is different than the indoor. But that's what they have to get ready to play in. So we got better from practice 1 to practice 15. It's still an evaluation through the whole process, but it's not something, and the players know too, that we're not making a decision walking off the field today saying, hey, this is the direction that we're going in. We'll be very authentic and look through everything and make sure that we get a really good feel for what it all looks like, and then who will best move this offense. That's what our decision is going to be based on.
The Buckeyes have 5 very talented scholarship quarterbacks on the roster. What does Chip Kelly think, just broadly speaking, about the quarterback situation for the Buckeyes right now?
I do. I think we got a lot of guys there. That part's tough, I think, because there's guys that deserve reps, and they're all competing for it. So, sometimes you'd like to be, sometimes when you had a guy who was an initial starter, well, he's going to get the bulk of the reps to get him better. But they capitalized on it, and we really rolled them. If you were at some of our spring practices, you're watching all those guys rotate in, rotate out. And as we talk about all the time, the old adage is don't count your reps, make your reps count. And we'll put it all together and really come up with, which guy do we really feel is going to help us move this offensively.
Kelly has said in the past that success on offense is going to hinge on the coaching staff figuring out what their guys do best and then putting them in position to do that thing. So where are they in that process, and then what do they have to do now moving forward to make it happen before the season?
Really good question. It's interesting because the one thing that I think sometimes makes it tough in an evaluation is what a good front we went against. So for 15 practices, those guys on the other side of the ball were a pain. Jack and JT and Tyleek and those guys. But I know come fall, there's not going to be anybody more happy that we have those guys on the defensive side of the ball because of what they can do. So I still think we'll have to really evaluate that, what we're good at, what we're not, what we got to get better at, what we got to work on. But I think the work we got against such a quality defense was really key for us.
This time last year, the offensive line was by far the biggest concern surrounding the program. Chip Kelly obviously was not there at that point, but how has he seen the offensive line progress over the course of those 15 practices this spring?
Yeah, I've been here a short amount of time, so I really don't have anything to compare it to, so I kind of tabula rasa, come in with a blank slate and just observe it. I think we're really athletic. I think Donnie and Seth and those guys inside are really smart and really intelligent. They allow you to be able to make adjustments in game. Just talking football with some of those guys, it's like, wow, these guys are wired the right way. And a lot of those guys have played a lot of football, so they can bank on their experience there. I think we've got about 4 guys that have played significant amount of snaps, and we got to make sure we can find out who the 5th guy is. But that's similar to where the quarterback spot is, I think. And I also think in the offensive line, you're not going to play a 16, 17-game season and just play with 5 guys. You really have to develop your depth there. There's going to be a number 2 center that's going to play a lot of football. There's going to be a number 2 guard, whether it's on either side of the ball. There's going to be a 3rd tackle. I think you're going to get tested, especially with this new playoff format. You really have to think that way. So, you're not looking for 5 starters. You're really looking for 10 starters because you're going to have to probably play 10 guys to get when you get through a 16, 17-game season.
Chip Kelly has no previous ties to Ohio State, but obviously has some pretty significant respect for the history of the program based on this answer. He was asked about the first play of the spring game. The Buckeyes came out in the T formation, not something you've seen a whole heck of a lot of in Columbus over the last few decades. So what was the inspiration for that?
Mr. Hayes, there's a looming figure around this whole program. We get to go to work every day in the Woody Hayes Athletic Center. So It was good enough for Woody. We're going to steal it. We're going to do it. We ran some last year. I think we took 21 snaps at UCLA and T. It's been a short yardage formation for us, and we've done some different things with it. But I think our players had a lot of fun, practicing that and doing some different things. So it's a small part of our offense. We will not be in the T 21 times in one game, but we may get it in some short yardage situations. And I think it's come back. There's a lot of schools right now that are starting to do that. It's really just you're trying to, you got a half a yard to get. You're trying to get your big guys in the game. And I think we used 3 tight ends and 2 running backs in our formation today, with Peckard being the fullback in that situation. So there's a lot of different things you can do in short yardage, but a little bit of a tribute to Coach Hayes and what he means to this program.
Kelly has a lot of very shiny toys to work with on the offensive side of the ball in pretty much every room in that meeting room in that building. So what is the most impressive thing to him so far in his time at Ohio State?
I think the most impressive thing since I've been here is how close this football team is. Some programs talk about a brotherhood. This is really a brotherhood. Our practices, as we talked about how good our defense is, they're highly competitive, but they're not combative. And those guys really work very, very well together, both the O-line and the D-line, the secondary and the receivers. The competition is it's got to be the best there is in the country, and that makes you better. But I think sometimes competition, guys can lash out and it gets really combative, and then all of a sudden the fight breaks out and we're trying to accomplish and get football done. But I think the way these guys cooperate and work together as a group is a special bond, and I think you're going to need the closest team and the most connected teams are the ones that win.
There has been a lot of talk about Jeremiah Smith, also known as J.J. Smith, over the course of the spring. So you might be forgiven for forgetting that, oh yes, Emeka Egbuka is also in that wide receiver room. And in case you did forget about Emeka Egbuka for any point during the spring, he had a real remember me kind of play with a one-handed catch during that spring game. So how important is someone like Emeka Egbuka going to be for this team this fall?
Good point. And Emeka has reminded me in the other 14 practice sessions of what he can do. Special player, and JJ's a really talented player also. But, I think all of the whole group, like Carnell Tate did some really good things watching him this spring. And for all of them, I mentioned it with the offensive line. I came in with a blank slate. I had no opinions formed. Not that, really just wide-eyed and just observe them. But, I think that wide receiver room is really special. And I think there's a bunch of guys in there. And again, when you have to play multiple games after the regular season is over, you're going to make sure you're going to need depth like that. And the fact that you feel a little bit comfortable right now that we got some guys there that can make some plays on the perimeter. And that really dictates how people are going to defend you. So you got a couple really good running backs, so are they going to load the box? Are you really going to load the box and leave those guys in one-on-one coverage? Well, then it's the quarterback's responsibility to decipher that and get the ball to those guys. So, or do they elicit double coverage? They elicit double coverage, and now it's a little bit lighter box and you can run the ball. So having too many weapons is a good problem to have. So
you heard Chip Kelly talk about the 5 scholarship quarterbacks earlier. Now you're going to get his impressions on the young quarterbacks. You're going to hear him talk about 3 guys, actually. Julian, Sayin, Aaron Noland, and then he's going to say JJ later. He's actually talking about Jeremiah Smith, wide receiver, but he's kind of lumping them in with these other young guys.
I always am so impressed with young guys that enroll early and watching how they get acclimated and what they do. When you look at Julian and Aaron and JJ, they should be in the hot lunch line of their high school, and they're out here playing in front of 80,000 people. And they've really progressed when you watch them in meetings and listen to them, and they interpret, so basically the whole concept here is we throw them in the deep end and see if they can swim. We didn't baby anything. We don't put the install in with, hey, you guys are install. We're going to install this with the older players, and then you guys, go sit at the kiddie table, and we're just going to do the really simple things with you. They get it all, and the more they can digest, the more when you're in a room, when you're checking for understanding and asking questions, and they can spit back to you, the more confidence you have when they get in there with the plays that you can call for them. So. Those guys have been impressive. They're still learning. They were the guys today that were kind of looking around and saying, wow, there's like 80,000 people here, along with the offensive coordinator and the quarterback coach, because I was kind of looking around because I had actually never been in this stadium until yesterday when we had our 14th practice in there. So I played Ohio State once when I was at Oregon, but that was in the Rose Bowl, so I had never been actually in the stadium until yesterday. So I caught myself when I went into the stadium today looking around saying 80,000 for a spring game. That's impressive.
Julian Sayin is definitely one of the players who raised his stock the most during the course of spring practices. So what has Chip Kelly been most impressed with about Julian Sayin during his time in Columbus?
Julian is a very fast processor. He really thinks very, very quickly on his feet. Like he makes really quick decisions. He doesn't stick on and reads. He can progress and he sees things really well for a young player, and not having been exposed to a lot of college defenses and especially what Jim does. Jim can make a young freshman quarterback cry with some of the stuff he does. But, I never saw that with Jules, and I that's been impressive, his ability to retain. And, him and JJ, the compliment I would say to them is if you got here and you didn't know what class they were in, you wouldn't say that those guys were freshmen in terms of how they've picked things up. And sometimes freshmen act like freshmen. But the guys who are special, they don't act like freshmen. They act like they're football players. And those are two guys that are examples of that.
Well, we still have a little bit more spring ball wrap up to go, and there's probably more transfer portal news coming. We got all sorts of stuff coming for you this week. Recruiting news potentially as well for the Buckeyes, all at BuckeyeHuddle.com. We hope you can join us there. That's where Tony, Kevin, and I cover the team. Mark covers recruiting. We got our whole team of X's and O's gurus making you a smarter football fan, plus a really fun, lively, and active board, the Huddle board presented by Jeff Ruby Steakhouse. That's all at BuckeyeHuddle.com. And, of course, you can also find us at YouTube.com/BuckeyeHuddle. Post lots of podcasts there. We get interviews there, all sorts of content, highlights. We'll have a bunch of summer camp stuff coming up. Lots of stuff there, all at youtube.com/BuckeyeHuddle. Make sure you're subscribed there. Make sure you hit that bell to get notified whenever we do a live show. And finally, make sure you hit that thumbs up whenever you're watching one of our videos. It helps other folks find those videos. Little thing you can do. It helps us out quite a bit. That'll do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.